morning, and welcome to another edition of the FTTC podcast, sponsored by the USDA Carcass Collection Team. When you're ready to abandon that carcass of a fantasy team, let the USDA come collect your dignity. We are your home for breaking news and breaking balls in the fantasy sports world. From touchdowns to tailgates, we've got it all covered with a dash of witty banter. I'm your host, Jason Stankiewicz, and today we're going to recap the league. It's been a few weeks since we've run through the standings, so we're going to run through the standings, give a quick recap where things stand, where some situations are that might play out, how things are looking at the top, how things are looking at the bottom, and who's in playoff contention, before finally getting into some Week 12 predictions. Ladies and gentlemen, from the FTTC, as we get into holiday season, we hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving. We're looking forward to some of the upcoming holidays, but first, let's get to this podcast. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Now, as we enter Week 12, it's been an interesting season today. This is probably the most parity that we've ever had in the FTTC. From top to bottom, things have been close all year. There are a couple teams starting to separate, though. So first things first, I want to run through the standings. We'll talk about the top. We'll talk about the bottom. We'll talk about who's been hot, who's been cold, how things have looked since some of the trades have shaken up the league. But, first things first, let's just take you through the standings. So at the top, we have Take a Stand, who's been there all year, dominating the points for. Honestly, fewest points against, second fewest points against as well. So a lot of luck from Take a Stand as well, but not that that's impacted him very much. He's been on top of the standings pretty much all year. He's sitting there at 8-3. Below him, we got two teams at 7-4. You got Jordy's Ghost and the Disasters, running pretty good lately. Then you got a couple teams at 6-5. You got myself, Stinky, followed by Steely Pete. And that's the top five. Rounding out the next, 6 through 10, we got Strickland Propane, Daddy Spooks, Mike's Lucky Charm, Vic Vinegar. So that's 6 through 9. All sitting there at 5 and 6, still in contention, losing records, but not out of it yet. And then you got the bottom feeders. You got Roadrunners, parentheses, Naz, Nice Catch, Blanco, Nino, Auto Draft, Bot Squad. We'll get to them in a second. But let's start at the top. So Take a Stand up there, 8-3, 1,227 points for, sitting there on a 3-win streak, and still has $78 of a waiver budget left. Honestly, Take a Stand has been solid all year, led by Christian McCaffrey and Raheem Mostert, who I believe are 1 and 2 in running backs this year. So, having the top 2 running backs, still got Jonathan Taylor in there. You got James Conner, Kyron Williams, 5, very usable running backs. And that's been the case with Take a Stand all year. Limited injuries, hasn't really lost anyone major other than Kyron Williams for a few weeks, but he's been consistent. His team's been solid. And overall, he's had Brock Purdy and Sam Howell most of the year, quarterback. I was very critical of Take a Stand's decisions early on, but honestly has made the best of it with a lot of the moves he's made. He hasn't really been impacted too much by not having a top-tier quarterback. He's been playing the stream game well. And Brock Purdy and Sam Howell have turned out to be a lot better than people expected. The wide receiver position, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave have had some down weeks. Evan Ingram hasn't been the best tight end. He's been a little thin with Jacoby Myers, Curtis Samuel. Did pick up Odell Beckham this week, so adding to that wide receiver core. But overall, those running backs have just absolutely dominated this year, and that's why Take a Stand has been up there all year and continues to be up there. Take a Stand going up against Roadrunners, parentheses, Naz this week in a big matchup on both ends of the standings. We'll get to that in a little bit. Moving on to number 2 and 3, Jordy's Ghost, won 2 in a row, and honestly, Jordy's Ghost has been just looking solid lately. Again, quietly going about his business. It's been a week in, week out thing. Just a relatively deep team. No real top end talent outside of Travis Kelce, but every week he's getting guys that are performing. He's gotten big weeks from Dallas defense, seemingly week in, week out. Brandon Ayuk has been solid. Michael Pittman's been solid. Josh Jacobs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Kelce, as I mentioned before, all have been solid. So it's been a solid year for Jordy's Ghost. Hasn't made too many moves, hasn't had to make too many big decisions. Overall, just kind of puts it along, sticking in there right at the top of the table. Very likely to make the playoffs. Moving on to the Disasters, who lost last week to bring him down to 7-4, down to 3rd place. All year we were talking about how the Disasters hadn't scored a lot of points, but they had really kicked it up in the past few weeks. 1,176 points. That's good for the 3rd most, sitting in 3rd. So These Acers, definitely a strong team. Did lose Joe Burrow last week, though. However, off the back of Joe Burrow, made a move to get Patrick Mahomes. A huge move, honestly. And, if we run through that trade real quick, because I don't think we've had an opportunity to talk about it yet. That trade was Patrick Mahomes and Nico Collins for Najee Harris and Jalen Waddle. And honestly, I think that's a pretty decent trade for both sides. Mahomes, you're getting real top-end talent who hasn't really performed at the top end yet, so there's some room to grow there, and if he does, watch out. Nico Collins has been very solid over the past few weeks, 12 points in week 9, 10 points in week 11. Just not bad performances, really. A guy you could definitely toss in the flex on any given week, and you could trust he'll probably show up close to double-digit points, if not over the board. On the other side, Strickland Propane received Najee Harris and Jalen Waddle. I think Najee Harris is slowing down here. Jalen Waddle had a great week last week. Prior to that, though, Harris did have 17 points, 14 points. He's been okay. Not a top tier running back, but decent enough. On the other side, Jalen Warren has really been picking things up, and I've said it earlier in the season. I'll say it again. I think that was a great pickup for Steely Pete. He's really proved out his value so far. The last player in that trade, Jalen Waddle. I think Strickland Propane did good to get Jalen Waddle. Tyreek Hill got a little bit banged up last week, was a little bit slow at a couple points. That being said, came out, looked all right, finished the game. Jalen Waddle, again, hasn't been that top-tier receiver, but he's been good enough. Definitely a slight upgrade on Nico Collins, so upgrading there, Strickland Propane, doing what he can to try and build out the team a little bit. But a good trade for the D's Acers to pick up Patrick Mahomes. You got that top-end talent, especially right after losing Joe Burrow. In there, he's had Keenan Allen, who's been solid all year. Jamar Chase has been great. That being said, Chase just did lose Joe Burrow. I think he ends up as wide receiver 2 after that. I think he'll still continue to put up numbers, kind of like Garrett Wilson has without anybody throwing him the ball. You got Rashad White, Alvin Kamara, Isaiah Likely. Likely, who, of course, is now relevant after Mark Andrews went down last week. A tough blow for myself. We'll get to that in a minute. Talk about one of the trades that I pulled off. But yeah, Isaiah Likely should fill in for Mark Andrews. A good pickup there for the D's Acers. Overall, D's Acers building out their roster for a little playoff run here. Building things up. I got a couple backup running backs in there in case anyone goes down, backup tight end. So overall, I think D's Acers is doing his best to position himself for a playoff run. It's going to be tough for anyone to take down and take a stand. Moving on to number 4, we got Stinky, myself. A tough week last week, losing Mark Andrews, who did go on IR. So getting that roster spot back is nice. I don't know that he'll actually be back, but it's probably worth sticking him in there. On the back of losing Mark Andrews, did make a trade. Myself and Mike's Lucky Charm, a blockbuster deal. I dispersed of A.J. Brown, picking up Isaiah Pacheco, Mike Evans, and Sam Laporta. Honestly, it was a pretty easy deal. And credit to Mr. Johnson over there at Mike's Lucky Charm. We had some discussions for a much smaller trade. He tossed a blockbuster out there. I thought it was too much value to refuse. Gave me the depth that I've been lacking all year. And overall, I think it's a trade that works for both of us. Mike's Lucky Charm, if Justin Jefferson comes back, has 2 top 5 receivers. That team is being built up big time. All he has to do, I think, is get into the playoffs. I'm very high on Mike's Lucky Charm. On the other side, picking up Pacheco, Evans, Sam Laporta, I got my tight end back. Mike Evans has been solid all year. Really not too much of a downgrade on A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, of course, is real top-end talent. Those players are tough to come by, but Mike Evans has actually been pretty good this year. And then picking up Isaiah Pacheco gave me that flex that I've been looking for. Another solid RB. Tony Pollard's been picking things up, but if I needed to throw Pacheco in there for forward and run a different flex, I could definitely do that. So gave me some roster flexibility, and that's really what I was looking for with that trade. I like the way we're positioned for the rest of the year. Tank Dell, I want to shout out him because he's been an absolute stud lately, throwing up, just 20, 15, 24. He's been just an absolute monster lately. And finally, Tony Pollard coming good last couple weeks. Man hadn't scored a touchdown in forever. Finally does it. Really happy about the way things are looking on my squad. Following up, we got Steely Pete, who was potentially going to make an appearance on the podcast today. Unfortunately, couldn't get him in time. But this man has just been absolutely carried by Dak and CD. That stack has been going off week in and week out. It's been good for almost 50 points a week. He's got 50 this week already from it. On the back of that, you got Cooper Kupp and Jalen Warren, who've been solid. Dalton Kincaid has been an absolute monster at tight end past few weeks, 11-15, 11-13. Steely Pete, what a job reforming the roster after the early season letdown. I mean, really a poor team that he built on. He made a couple deals with Roadrunners Naz, really stole some value there and built out a team that is now very competitive. If Steely Pete can pull off another win this week, man should get into the playoffs, and he'll be in good shape. He'll be a tough team to play. I don't, I took him down last week, but I don't know that I want to match up with him again in the playoffs. Again, that's our top 5. Now, running through the next 6 through 9, Strickland Propane lost last week, made a couple deals to reshape the roster, and honestly, I think those deals are great. When we look at those deals, we discussed a little bit last week the Travis Etienne trade. Shipping out Mahomes, you got CJ Stroud to fill in. Stroud has been awesome this year. Diggs and Waddle at wide receiver, Etienne and Gus Edwards. I apologize to Gus Edwards for criticizing all year as the corpse of Gus Edwards. The man has been scoring touchdowns every single week. He's got over the last, from week 7 to week 11, he has 7 touchdowns. Sorry, 9 touchdowns. I mean, that's just insane. And I hate it as a Lamar owner, but a great pickup for Strickland Propane. Credit to him for being a believer this year. Brian Robinson has also been a fantastic running back. Left Debo on the bench this week. A tough one him. We'll get to that in the breakdown. But again, Strickland Propane is a good team that if he heats up at the right time, you better watch out. He's got to make sure he can get into the playoffs, though. And right now, sitting in that 6th slot, he's got all the tiebreakers in his favor. With points 4, he's got to keep that up. He needs a big scoring week this week. In 7th, we got Team Spooks. Again, Jalen Hurts has been carrying him. Tyreek Hill has been carrying him. Really a big squad that I think kind of needed to make a move at the deadline. Held off, didn't make any major moves, didn't shake things up. Devin Singletary has been decent as a little sleeper running back. David Montgomery coming back, he's been fine enough. But I just, if anything happens to Hurts or Hill, I don't see this roster going very far. Honestly, it needs a little bit of work, but I don't think in any danger of finishing last. There's definitely some much worse teams. And if he gets into the playoffs, gets out at the right time, like anyone else, could end up taking this thing out. As we get down to the 8th slot, then we have one of my favorite teams, and I said it before. I'm going up against him this week, but I think Mike's Lucky Charm is a very good team. And when I laid out the odds to win the title, I put him extremely high. Got some open eyes out there as a result of that, but just strong in every position across the board, and that is very dependent though on Justin Jefferson coming back. If he does come back, loaded at wide receiver, got solid running backs, decent tight end, a lot of depth. You can play some matchups. It'll come down to the manager for this one. If Justin Jefferson can come back, it'll come down to the manager and whether or not Mike's Lucky Charm can get into the playoffs. If he can get there, he's got a great shot, but he's got to get there. Just like anyone else who's sitting at this 5 and 6 right now, if they can get in, almost anyone can win it. Almost anyone can win it, except for maybe the next man. And I'm going to go in on my friend Trev here because I think some of the deals that he made his team a little bit worse. The Calvin Ridley deal, especially, just to recap that one for you. That was Mike Evans and Zach Charbonnet to Mike's Lucky Charm for Calvin Ridley, Tyjae Spears, and Kyler Murray. I just, I'm not the biggest fan of the Calvin Ridley deal. I think Ridley had a great week last week on Vic Fittiger's bench, 27 points, but he's so hit or miss. You don't know what you're going to get from him. He's not that top end talent. Kyler has been fine, but as we've seen from Take a Stand, apparently you can get by with quarterbacks who aren't top end quarterbacks. And then Tyjae Spears is really just a toss-in. He gets some opportunity, but not enough to justify a roster spot. Hasn't scored double digits since week 5. I just think it was a trade that made his team a little bit worse, and he gave away a little bit of depth. But credit to Vic Vinegar for trying to be super active at the deadline, made a lot of moves. A tough one losing Deshaun Watson, too, that really tanked Amari Cooper's value. A tough one losing Joe Burrow, that tanks T. Higgins' value. And then Achane gets hurt right as he comes back. A lot of injury luck, a lot of unfortunate injury luck for Vic Vinegar this year as well behind the scenes. Team just not quite as strong as it was looking. Again, like anyone else, he's got to get in. We can see what happens, but I do think that a lot of the deals he made may have set him back a little bit, which you never like to hear. Then we got our bottom dwellers. We got Roadrunners Naz in here at 4-7. Maybe the best of the rosters down there, at least best starting rosters. No real depth. Not much to say here, honestly. I do think Roadrunners Naz ends up safe. Just because I think there's probably the most talent on this roster out of the bottom three, but we'll see. It's anyone's game at the bottom. Next, we have Nice Catch Blanco Nino, again carried by Josh Allen. Devontae Adams finally had a little bit of a week last week, 17 points, his biggest week in a while. He needs Devontae if he's going to save the season. Devontae and DeAndre Swift have to be big players for that team. If they don't put up, you got to watch out because I don't know that there's a lot of talent on this roster outside of them. Puka Nacua, hit or miss. If he has a good week, Cooper Kupp goes down. Puka could be a guy that steps right back up and becomes a huge player for Nice Catch Blanco Nino. But out of the bottom three, I think it's the second worst roster after the next man, Mr. Auto Draft Bot Squad. Sitting down there at 4-7. It's been tough this year. It's been tough. He's dealt with a lot of injuries, lost Aaron Jones. Again, Aaron Jones has been probably one of the worst picks in fantasy this year. Man hasn't done anything. Austin Eckler's been fine since coming back. He's had 19, 20, 19, and 6. 6, a little bit of a letdown last week. If Eckler hasn't put up 20, though, I'm not sure Auto Draft Bot Squad has a chance. With Justin Fields back, at least he's a quarterback again. Thielen gets some opportunity. DK Metcalf. It's been tough, though, for Bot Squad, and honestly, I think they're probably destined for last. So looking at our standings here, that's a quick run-through at the top again. I think Take a Stand has to be the favorite to win. I'll be surprised if he doesn't pull it out, unless he has some kind of running back injuries, but overall, just the best team. 5 crazy good running backs and enough depth around them to carry on. At the bottom, I think Auto Draft Bot Squad has the worst team. But I'm going to come out and say Nice Catch Blanco Nino finishes last. I think it would be crazy. I think people want to see it. They want to see the commissioner go down. Nice Catch Blanco Nino matched up against Dazasters this week. Auto Draft Bot Squad going up against Strickland Propane. Roadrunners Naz playing Take a Stand. So some tough matchups for the bottom three. We'll see who pulls it out, but that's my favorite right now. In terms of playoffs, we'll see how things shake out this week. This could be a big deciding week. If the 6 and 5 teams end up pulling it out, none of the 6 and 5 teams are playing each other. None of the 7 and 4 teams are playing each other. So the top could separate. If all the top wins this week, we will see a big separation in the league, and it will be an absolute battle for that 6th spot. If any of the top lose, things just get tighter, more parity. It'll get super interesting. We'll see how things shake out. As we move into matchups this week, we'll do a quick rundown. We'll get off the air, get this thing up live so you guys can listen to it before football actually starts this week. But a quick rundown here. So we got Stinky playing Mike's Lucky Charm. A huge deciding matchup for Mike's Lucky Charm. Has to have this win to get into the playoffs. Losing this one will be tough to come back from, as it will be for any 5 and 6 team. Meanwhile, Stinky on the other side, if Stinky can pull out a win this week, that's a big separator. The odds of getting the playoffs at that point are fantastic. We'll see who can pull it out. Right now, we have Stinky with 34.5 points going up against 27.8 from Mike's Lucky Charm. Stinky's had 2 players go. Mike's Lucky Charm has had 3. Right now, the projections are favoring Stinky 114 to 102. We'll see how it plays out, but right now, Stinky with a little bit of an advantage. As we move into our next matchup here, we have the Dazasters going up against Nice Catch Blanco Nino. Nice Catch Blanco Nino got 13.5 points through the Thursday and Friday games. Tyler Lockett, 4.5. Brent Aubrey, I don't know if his name is Brent or what, 9 points from the kicker position. Dazasters has had no one go. So Dazasters right now projected for 109. Nice Catch Blanco Nino, 89. I think Dazasters pulls it out without much of a fight, and we see Nice Catch Blanco Nino really start sweating over there. Next matchup, we got Strickland Propane and Auto Draft Bot Squad. Propane in here, up 43 to 4. Bot Squad got 4 points from DK Metcalf. Propane, 15 from Waddle, 7 from Brian Robinson, 21 from Miami D. A big day for Miami D against the Jets. And anytime you get 21 points from defense, you got to feel good about your week. Right now, Propane projected at 120, Auto Draft Bot Squad at 87. I think that probably ends up true. I don't think Bot Squad has a chance here. Again, he'll be sweating down there. Nice Catch Blanco Nino after this week. Fourth match of the week, Take a Stand, Roadrunners Naz Congratulations to Mr. Naz, by the way, on Nazareth Academy winning the Illinois State Championship for football. Who'd have thought that they could do that? Apparently, Mr. Naz, I wouldn't be surprised if it impacts him today, though. He's probably hungover, probably celebrating a little too much last night. His team's not looking great right now. 40 points thus far, 7 for Tua Tagovailoa, 13 for Garrett Wilson, 15 for Cooks. Cooks has been a solid pickup lately. George Kittle, only 3 points, a little bit disappointing for the tight end he traded for. On the other side, you got Take a Stand with 86 already. 10 from Purdy, 28, 21 from McCaffrey and Mostert, 12 from Sanders, 14 from San Francisco D. Take a Stand, only 4 guys left, 5 on the Roadrunners Naz side, but Take a Stand projected for 132 to 92. Again, I think we see this 3-way tie at the bottom continue after this week with all 3 of those teams dropping. Next up, we got Jordy's Ghost and Vic Vinegar. A big one for Vic Vinegar, and things didn't start out great. Only 14 from Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 from Breece Hall, and 0 from the Detroit defense. A big 0. You hate to see that from your defense. That is an absolute killer to not get any points there. On the other side, you got Jared Goff, 18 points. What's his name? Brandon Ayuk. I almost said Brian. Brandon Ayuk, 12 points. Jahmyr Gibbs, 9. Dallas, 16. Jordy's Ghost at 55 to 22. Again, Jordy's Ghost projected to easily pull this out, and I think it's pretty obvious. I think that's the result. Jordy's Ghost moves ahead, basically clinches a playoff spot this week with a win. Meanwhile, Vic Vinegar going to make things real difficult on himself as he searches for that final playoff spot. Finally, our last matchup of the week. We got what is shaping up to be a pretty tight one here. Mr. Team DS, Mr. Daddy Spooks in here, 36 points from the Thursday-Friday game. Steely Pete, 47 on the other side. Steely Pete, again, 50 points, 47 points from Dak and CD. So a great Thursday for him. On the other side, Team DS, 36 points from Tyreek Hill, Dave Montgomery. Not bad either. And as a result, our projections are very close. So we have Team DS in here, 114, Steely Pete, 116. Steely Pete needs this. Absolutely needs this. Would put him firmly in a playoff spot. On the other side, Team DS, if he can pull this out, man, that would make things interesting. He would slice up the standings a little bit. We'll see if he can do it. He's had 2 of his best players go. As we mentioned, Team DS, very top-heavy. We'll see if Jalen Hurts can be the guy this week, get him another 30-point performance. And if Devin Singletary can get in the end zone again, Singletary's been sneaky good lately. He's really taken over that job in Houston and been the big man on campus in the last few weeks. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. A little bit of a roundup for you. I know it's been a while since we've done a solo pod. We look forward to having some guests on again next week. And in the coming weeks, we'll start to talk to some of those who are under pressure. We'll get some great commentary in here. I am super excited for what's to come. And, I think it's going to be a great finish to this league. I really cannot wait to see who ends up on top and who ends up on bottom, mostly bottom. I mean, I think it's just going to be so interesting to see if the commissioner ends up down there. But there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for listening to another episode of the FTTC podcast. Best of luck to the league in the upcoming Week 12 matchups. We look forward to recapping them again next week. I'm your host, Jason Stankiewicz. Until next time.